It was a quiet morning in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré was in his office at the presidential palace, reviewing documents related to a new agricultural development program. The room was silent, interrupted only by the soft sound of the fan spinning above his head and the occasional rustle of papers. While organizing the files, his personal assistant entered the room with a white envelope in hand. "Mr. President," he said. "This message arrived recently via diplomatic who channels it appears to be from someone in the United States." Claire frowned in surprise. He wasn't expecting international correspondence anytime soon, especially from someone connected to the United States. Carefully, he opened the envelope and removed a handwritten letter. As he read the words, his expression changed from curiosity to deep emotion. The letter said, "Dear President Traoré, my name is James Peterson. I'm a simple farmer from the state of Iowa in the United States. I have always been a loyal supporter of Donald Trump, but recently something made me rethink my beliefs. Watching a documentary about Africa, I heard his words about self-reliance and dignity. You talked about how Africa needs respect, not saviors. These words touch me deeply. I never thought I'd say this, but you're right. Our way of seeing the world needs to change. As a farmer, I know the value of hard work and the land that sustains us, but I also realize that we Americans often underestimate the efforts of other people, especially in Africa. His leadership showed me that we can learn from each other without arrogance or paternalism. I want to thank you for that, and I want to do more. I'm sending a small contribution to support your agricultural projects. It's not much, but it's a gesture of solidarity. I hope you accept. With respect, James Peterson." Traoré slowly lowered the letter, his eyes filling with tears. He did not expect that his words delivered in a speech months before could touch someone so far away and so different from him. An American farmer, Trump supporter, recognizing the importance of dignity and respect between people. It was something that went beyond political and cultural differences. "That's amazing," he muttered to himself, holding the letter in both hands. His assistant, noticing his emotion, asked, "Is something wrong, Mr. President?" "No," replied Traoré, smiling. "On the contrary, this is something extraordinary." He asked them to prepare an immediate response for James. He didn't want the American farmer to think his message had gone unnoticed. After reading James Peterson's letter, Ibrahim Traoré sat in silence for a few minutes, reflecting on the weight of the American farmer's words. He realized that this message was not just a gesture of solidarity, it was proof that his ideas were reaching people far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Traoré decided to respond personally. He knew his letter needed to be thoughtful, respectful, and full of gratitude, but he also wanted to take the opportunity to reinforce the values he stood for. With a pen in his hand, he began to write, "Dear Mr. Peterson, I received your letter with deep emotion. Your words touched me more than I can express. It's rare to find someone willing to acknowledge their own biases and change their perspective, but that's exactly what you did, and that's a truly admirable thing. Your support means a lot to us, especially because it comes from someone who, as you said, has such different views than mine. This proves that when we are willing to listen to each other, we can build bridges where there were once walls. The contribution you made will be used to support our local farmers, helping them develop sustainable techniques and improve their harvests. But most importantly, your message will be shared with our people as a reminder that kindness and respect can come from unexpected places. I hope we continue this conversation in the future. Maybe one day you can visit Burkina Faso and see the impact of your gesture in person. It would be an honor to welcome you here. With deep gratitude, Ibrahim Traoré." Upon finishing the letter, Traoré felt a renewed sense of hope. He knew this was more than a simple dialogue between two people. It was an example of how empathy can unite seemingly in the following days, his team sent the letter along with a small symbolic souvenir, a corn seed grown in Burkina Faso, accompanied by an explanatory note. "This seed represents the potential for growth when we plant the seeds of collaboration and respect," the note said. Meanwhile, James Peterson received Traoré's response with tears in his eyes. He could hardly believe that the president of Burkina Faso had devoted so much time and consideration to his message. For him, this was more than a letter, it was a lesson in humility and leadership. "My wife thought I was going crazy," James told his friends over dinner, "but I needed to do something. This President, he is changing the world, starting with respect." The story of the exchange of letters between Traoré and Peterson quickly gained attention on social media. A local journalist discovered the story and wrote a detailed article about the emotional impact of James's message and Traoré's response. The article was widely shared, inspiring others to reflect on their own perceptions and attitudes. For Traoré, this was proof that leadership is not just about big speeches or political decisions. Sometimes it's simple gestures like a handwritten letter that have the power to transform hearts and minds. During a press conference weeks later, a journalist asked Traoré about the letter. He smiled as he replied, "Sometimes the biggest revolutions start with the smallest actions. A letter, a seed, a word of respect. These are the tools that truly change the world." The audience applauded enthusiastically while James, watching live from his home in Iowa, felt a quiet sense of pride at having been a part of this story. The story of the exchange of letters between Ibrahim Traoré and James Peterson quickly gained international attention. Newspapers, magazines, and television programs have highlighted the unlikely connection between an African president and a Trump supporting American farmer. For many, this was proof that political and cultural differences could be overcome when there was mutual respect and a willingness to listen. In Burkina Faso, James's letter became a source of inspiration. Traoré decided to share the message in the national speech, emphasizing the importance of dialogue and global solidarity. This man, he said during the speech, is not just an Iowa farmer, he is an example of how we can change our perspectives and build bridges where there once were walls. His contribution is not just financial, it is symbolic. It reminds us that we all have something to offer regardless of who we are or where we come from. Traoré's words deeply touched the Burkina Bay people. Many began to see international support differently, realizing that dignity and respect were more important than any material resources. Meanwhile, James Peterson continued his life in Iowa, but now with a new perspective. He started participating in local events on sustainable agriculture and international cooperation, sharing his experience with other farmers. I used to think the world's problems were very far from me, he said during a talk, but now I know that each of us can make a difference. It all starts with a simple gesture of kindness and respect. Inspired by Traoré's response, James decided to expand his impact. He created an initiative called Seeds of Respect, which raised funds to support agricultural projects in African countries. The name of the initiative was inspired by the corn seed sent by Traoré as a symbol of collaboration. This seed represents more than agriculture, James explained in an interview. It represents the potential for growth. When we plant the seeds of empathy and solidarity, the initiative quickly gained support in the United States. Other farmers and business people began to contribute, moved by James's story and Traoré's leadership. Within a few months, Seeds of Respect had already raised enough funds to finance several projects in Burkina Faso and other African countries. Traoré in turn used the opportunity to reinforce his values of self-sufficiency and dignity. During a visit to a rural community benefiting from the initiative's funds, he met a young farmer named Awa who had received training and equipment thanks to the program. Mr. President, Awa said emotionally, thanks to you and Mr. Peterson, I can now dream of being a successful farmer. This means everything to me and my family. Traoré smiled proudly. You don't just owe it to us, Awa, you're proving that when we give people the right tools, they can conquer the world. In the following months, the partnership between James Peterson and Traoré became a model of international collaboration. They showed that even in a world divided by borders and ideologies, it was possible to find points of convergence when both sides were willing to listen and learn. For Traoré, this was more than a political triumph. It was proof that genuine leadership involves not only making difficult decisions, but also using every situation to promote the common good. Months after exchanging letters and creating the Seeds of Respect initiative, James Peterson decided to do something he had never imagined: visit Burkina Faso. He wanted to personally see the impact of his contribution and meet the communities that had benefited. Traoré, upon learning of James's intention, immediately invited him to a meeting in Ouagadougou. The day of the meeting was marked by an atmosphere of emotion and respect. James, dressed in his simple farmer's clothes, arrived at the presidential palace accompanied by his wife Mary. They were warmly welcomed by Traoré, who greeted them with a sincere hug. Welcome, Mr. Peterson, Traoré said, smiling. You are already part of our family here in Burkina Faso. James, visibly moved, replied, Mr. President, I don't know how to thank you for this. I never imagined that a simple gesture could bring me here. Traoré shook his head with a deep look. It's not about the gesture, James, it's about what it represents. You've shown us that even in a divided world, we can find common ground when we're willing to listen and learn. The two spent the day visiting rural communities that had benefited from the Seeds of Respect initiative. They walked the fields, talked to local farmers, and shared simple but meaningful meals. During a stop in a small village, James met Awa, the young farmer who had benefited from the program. She talked about how the training and equipment had transformed her life, allowing her to dream big and build a better future for her family. Mr. Peterson, Awa said, holding his hands gratefully, you changed my life not just with resources but with hope. James felt tears streaming down his face as he responded, no, Awa, changing your own life. I just did what anyone should do, help when I can. At the end of the day, Traoré organized a special ceremony to honor James and his family. In a moving speech, he highlighted the impact a simple act of kindness can have on the world. Today we celebrate more than a partnership, said Traoré, his voice cracking with emotion. We celebrate the proof that dignity and respect can overcome prejudice and unite people from different parts of the world. James Peterson showed us that when we plant the seeds of solidarity, we reap a better future for everyone. The audience applauded enthusiastically while James hugged Traoré, and his wife Mary cried discreetly at her side. In the days that followed, James's visit to Africa became a global symbol of reconciliation and empathy. Newspapers and television networks highlighted how an American farmer had become an example of positive change. Even political leaders have begun to cite the story as inspiration to promote more inclusive dialogues. For James, this was more than a personal moment. It was proof that every small gesture can transform the world. Before I thought my actions didn't matter, he said during an interview upon returning to the United States. I now know that each of us has the power to make a difference. It all starts with a simple act of kindness. As he watched the cornfields bloom under the African sun, Traoré felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He knew there was still a lot of work to be done, but he also realized that every small step was moving the world toward a better future. At the end of the interview, he smiled and concluded, "True progress is not measured by what we